back, everyone, to another episode of Unloaded and Uncovered podcast with me, your host Magda Desir. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more updates and interviews. We drop interviews weekly every Friday at 12 a.m. Central Standard Time. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Unloaded and Uncovered Podcast, and do not forget to follow us and find us on Facebook at Unloaded and Uncovered. All right, now I have my next guest, Shruti. Yay, I said it. I said it. I'm proud of
Yeah.
myself. So, hi, Shruti. How are you?
Hi, Magda. I'm very well. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Thank you for being here and thank you for taking time out of your day to join me. I know you have a very, very busy day, so we're not going to hold you that long. We want to just, get this going and get you prepared for your next venture after this. So, Shruti, where are you from?
So I am from India, particularly north side of India, but currently I live in Canada.
Okay, you know what? My first guess was Indian. Which is interesting. She is a recovered alcoholic, and she has a
Okay.
company called Everbloom and things like that. So she was a joy to have. Her name was Sonia. So yeah, okay, that's cool. What north side? What's the difference between that north, south, east, west portion of India? Is there? I know that there are different cultures and tribes, we were talking about the Indian Matchmaker on Netflix. So
Okay.
I know a little bit about the different cultures and tribes. So if you could like pinpoint what tribe or what culture of India you're in, that will make me know like, okay, I know what that is, or I'm familiar with that culture or familiar with that tribe, if that makes sense.
Oh, of course. So it would be my pleasure to let you and the listeners know a little bit about the country that I come from. So India is a huge country when you talk about multiculturalism, and it's pretty much like Canada. So just like Canada has different provinces with different languages and different ways of addressing different issues. Similarly with India, actually the country is divided into four major regions. So one is north where I am from.
Uh-huh.
North is mostly a very patriarchal society where men are usually the heads of the family, they are the primary bread earners. Then we come to the south, which is actually just opposite the north. So in south, it's basically a matriarchy. So much so that in the earlier centuries, property was actually passed on from mothers to daughters. So that
Oh,
had a very empowering culture. And then when I talk about west of India, that's where you have the financial capital called Mumbai. You must see Mumbai in all of the Bollywood movies. That's where Shah Rukh Khan is, and all of these series of Netflix that we were talking about, Indian matchmaking and all. They are basically located there. So West is our financial hub, including Gujarat, which is the home to our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, as well. And then we come to the eastern side of India, which is home to one of the most lip smacking cuisines you can ever have, Magda. So I strongly say that each part of India has a very different flavor, a unique way of living, which is very diverse. And that is why I think I've learned from a very young age the importance of understanding different cultures and the ability to respect different perspectives.
okay, that's a nice way of putting it. And it's interesting that you say that the west portion, the west side of India, is where we get the Bollywood and the Netflix series. That's interesting. So north, east, and south would they ever partake in something like that?
Oh
In
yeah, so right now we have the concept of smart cities where all of these provinces are also coming up with increased labor opportunities, increased industrialization. But I think if you look at the history of the world, Magda, most civilizations were near water bodies. And because the West is where the Indian Ocean is and the South is where the Indian Ocean is, I think they just got developed much ahead of the North and the East. And if you have the opportunity to be the first in the race, you will always continue to develop faster than the other bits of the country.
Interesting. Okay. And it's interesting that you said in the South, the mothers pass on their inheritance over to their daughters. You don't hear that a lot. I mean, you know about okay, growing up in America, you kind of know about some of that, but it's not necessarily heard of where the matriarch is like the prominent figure in a particular culture a lot. Well, it is in most cultures, but to hear that, it's passed on to the daughters is very interesting. I really want to tap into that, but we're not going to tap into it today per se. But I would love to learn more about that because I would really like to hear like how that happened and how that transpired. Like that's kind
Oh,
of
of
cool.
course. It
That's kind
is, it is. And if you delve, like, just to double down on Indian culture, Magda, very quickly I can tell you that even if you look at our religion and our scriptures, Vedic scriptures, which is like passed on from like 5,000 years and above, we always used to refer to our gods with the name of the female deity first, followed
of
by the name of the male deity. So when we call, like, I am a firm believer of Krishna ji. So if you call, so you will call Radhe Krishna, which has the first name of the woman, followed by the name of the man. So we belong to that culture where women were given prominence, not only in the nomenclature of a family, but in passing off of our possessions and inheritance and education and taking family decisions as well. So it would be a good deep dive for you and for the audiences if they're ever interested in this.
that is beautiful. You really don't hear about that a lot. That is amazing. Yeah, I'm gonna deep dive into that. I would love to learn more. Now I'm gonna actually put. I'm not exactly sure like where I would start off. Maybe I will talk to you later offline about this. But I would love to go visit, the southern part of India and dive deeper into that culture because that just sounds very, very interesting. I'd like that. I'd love that for women. Okay, I'm just all
Of
right.
course.
My mind is like going a mile a minute. So let's get into you, Shruti. Let's really get into you. So Shruti, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you grew up, your background, all of that.
Of course. So, like I said, I come from a very middle class family in the north. My father was in the government. My mother was working before she was getting married. But then, after she had me and my brothers, it was basically taking care of the three kids, managing the house, and giving us good value system so that we grew up to be mature and sensible adults. And I mean, like I was mentioning, because it was not, it was still patriarchy. So even though in the confines of my house, me and my mother were the first ones to decide where's the family going for vacation, what are we doing for our finances and everything. As soon as I used to step outside the house, the environment used to change because then I would hear more of men voicing out their opinions as to how I should be leading my life to the point. And Magda, this was a milestone in my life. So I just want to take like an opportunity to let you know about this. Probably you'll find it fascinating. So I just completed my grads and I was looking to do a post grad, like an MBA, a degree in business, because that's what I was interested in. And I was talking to my family, and in India, you have these family festivals where the whole family will come together, we'll share a meal, we will have a fun time. So I had my uncles who had come over to visit us at that point in time. And so, generally you ask the youngsters in the family, what are you planning to be? What are you trying to do? So this guy, in all of good intention, he said, what do you plan to do? And I said, I want to study business and probably I want to work outside of India. First of all, nobody in my family, like no woman on my father's side, has ever been in a hostel.
Mm.
No woman has ever pursued anything like a business or a degree like that. And third thing is, most of my father's family has never even left their state for leaving the country, and including the men in the family. So this guy, my uncle, his face turns all white. He doesn't speak for like next 2 minutes. And then he gathers his thoughts and he's like, well, I don't really see women leading in business so much. Why don't you do a degree in education and, become a teacher? Or his one daughter was a doctor. So he was like, or you can study medical. You did your biomedical engineering. So get into medical and become a doctor. Those are the professions which are respectable for women. And I hear him and I look at my father, and my father, knowing the fiery side of me, he's like, I beg you, don't say anything right now. We'll get you to do everything that you want. So yeah, I mean, this is the kind of dichotomous culture that I grew up in. But again, I'm very, very fortunate, Magda, throughout my life to have very strong pillars of support of my father, my mother, my brothers. They are unlike the typical men that most Indian women grow up with. So they never stopped me from doing anything. In fact, they always pushed me to lead a life where my actions are more reflective of my hopes rather than my fears. So I was
Hmm.
always like, if I can wish this, I can work towards this because I know that I have an army of people behind me pushing me towards achieving my goals.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, you know what? I'm of Haitian descent, so come from a Haitian Caribbean background, and it's interesting how I see some similarities between our
Hmm.
cultures, particularly where well, in our culture, if you are not a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, or any profession that garners a lot of money, you're kind of like an outcast. You're
Hmm.
not, uh, you're whatever you want to do outside of those professions, you've technically wasted your life and wasted your time. But to hear your uncle tell you that a doctor or a teacher is more of a woman role and you shouldn't venture out and seek anything outside of that, that's, I don't know, for me that's kind of like that. I would have been offended. I probably would have went off. I know your dad told you please don't say anything, but for me I would have been like, so you think that we're only good to just have children and tend to you and do all this other stuff just simply because we're a woman? Like we can't have that? That's yeah, I would have went off a little bit. But when he did say that, what was your first initial like reaction? I know you talked about it a little bit, but did it hurt your feelings? Were you like, I know this man did not come over here and talk to me crazy like that, knowing that I am who I am? Like, what was your first thought that came to mind when he said that?
Okay, so I'll take a step back and tell you, I was really triggered by whatever he said because, like I said, within the family of the five of us, I was never told that you cannot do this because you're a girl. Like,
Oh,
never ever growing up. And then I did know, like, obviously, when you live with your relatives for a number of years, you know the place and you know their thoughts and you know how they deal with their own daughters and their own family. But Magda, I must mention this. So when I was 13, okay, not very like I wasn't an adult yet, but I just stepped into my teens. And that's
mm-hmm.
when you have you have your rush of hormones, and that's the first time probably most of us have a crush. I had a crush, and I was discussing it with my mom because she's also my best friend, and I always felt that she never judged me. She never told me, "You are 13, I'm sending you to school to study. How come you have a crush?" But she was like, who's this guy? Can you tell me more about him? So we had that kind of a relationship. And so I was 13. We were spending summer vacation at my grandmother's place, my maternal grandmother. And we were just talking about, in general. And I asked my grandma, I said, Grandma, did you always wanted to be a housemaker? And she looked at me and something changed on her face and she said, you know what? I was the first in my village, and I'm talking this about she was born in the early 1930s, Magda, just to keep things into perspective. And
Mm-hmm.
India was still under British rule. We were still not
Yes.
independent at the point in time. She was the first one in her village to pass 10th standard. She was the daughter of a landowner, and she was the first one, but she was married off immediately because 1930s. You're basically 15 years old. You should get married, have kids, and then so she was like, no, actually, I wanted to become a lawyer, and that's why
Oh,
she told my mom because my mom was a lawyer, and she told my mother, you are going to be a lawyer because I couldn't be. But then my mother, like I mentioned in our beginning of the episode, she had to leave her job because she had three kids. And
yeah.
it was deemed to be a primary responsibility of a mother to take care of the kids and not the father because the father is contributing by way of bringing home the dough. So
Right.
when I asked my grandma this and I looked at my mother, you know what the both of them told me, Magda, that is still holds true for my life and is the North Star whenever I am surrounded by dark clouds, because unfortunately I lost both my grandmother and my mother. It's the words that will sound in me so clearly. So my mother said, looking at my grandmother, this is
Mm-hmm.
a moment I want you to remember, Shruti, because generations and generations of women across hundreds of years have been told to sacrifice their own life so that the next generation is able to fulfill their dreams. But God forbid if the next generation is a woman, then the chain goes on. And she said to me, she said, I want the buck to stop at you. I want you to live the life that you want without ever having the need to explain why you want to do a certain thing. And so when my uncle said that, obviously I was triggered, but I also remembered that this is not a conversation worth having because he's nobody in my life. I have the
Mm,
support of this generational wisdom of women standing behind me so that I'm able to live the life that I truly imagine for myself.
that's beautiful. Do you have any children, if you don't mind me asking?
No, I don't want to have kids, and I have a very strong point of view about why. But
Okay.
no, I've been really lucky to be leading a life that I truly wanted for myself.
That's beautiful. That's also amazing. I believe that every woman should have that option to either want kids or not want kids. I don't think it does not make them, having children or not doesn't make you a better woman or whatnot. I feel like any woman, whether she is a mother or not, she's whole. Whatever life path that she chooses, I respect it and I love that for them. Some women would love children, some women don't. And hey, I'm kind of teetering between the fence too, trying to figure out if I want children too, because whoo, that's a lot of work. But
Yeah,
that is
and
actually. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, no, no. I was just trying to bring to the point something that is in my religion. So I'm a Hindu. I follow
Okay.
Sanatan Dharma. And one of the philosophies of Sanatan Dharma is motherhood is not defined by biologically being able to reproduce. Motherhood is far more bigger than just being able to push a child through your vagina or get a C-section done. Motherhood is basically how well are you able to take care of your parents? How well are you able to take care of your siblings? How respectful are you to people who need your kindness and compassion and help? And are you able to create a better life for them versus what they were given? And all of these are aspects of motherhood. And I think the second
Mm,
question that I usually get when I tell people, oh, I don't want to have kids is, what's your legacy? And I'm like, there are so many ways to leave a legacy behind. Write a book that can provoke, waves of thought change in the society. Plant a tree that will obviously outlive me. So the tree would be there producing fruits for others, which I have never seen. The third thing is this podcast, Magda, and that was the reason I started the podcast is to get your story, your thoughts, and your voice out in the world. I think that's the biggest legacy anyone can ever leave. And if you look at all of these global leaders, I don't see them ever getting married or having kids. Like, do you know who was Newton's child? Or do you know who Angela Merkel is married to? Do you know that all these Nobel laureates like Maya Angelou and others, like you have so many ways to leave a positive legacy. So if you choose not to be a biological mother, that's just not just means that you are not a mother at all. I'm
yeah.
sure that my brothers and my siblings would attest to the fact that I'm more a mother to them than a sister.
That's beautiful, Shruti. To be honest, you've honestly put a different perspective on the word motherhood and a different outlook and viewpoint on motherhood for me. Because in my mind, what I'm accustomed to and what I've seen is motherhood is you're kind of like a sacrificial lamb to your family. You're literally putting others before yourself, and you are taking care of others before you ever take care of yourself, in particular. And I feel like, especially with women, especially in my culture too, they again sacrifice themselves, but they never turn all the stuff that they give out to their family and their friends and their children. They never pour it back into them. And I've been, I talk with my therapist about that a lot. I'm like, hey, I do want to have children, but I want to make sure that I am full. You know what I'm saying? My cup is full before I pour into my children and into my husband. Because if my cup is not full, I can't service them the way that I want to service them. I can't help them the way that I want to, help them if my cup is full. So I really want to hone into the fact that um self-care is very important, and learning how to love myself is very, very important. And you with what you gave me in terms of like what motherhood is, I never would have thought of it like that. So now it's like a light bulb went off, and a light bulb, excuse me, went off, and I'm just like, oh wait. this is a really interesting way, a viewpoint on what motherhood is. I'm going to add that. I'm going to go back and watch this, but I'm going to add that to, my definition of what motherhood is and do more research on that. That was beautiful. That was
Thank
really,
you.
really beautiful. I love that perspective. I'm learning a
Thank
lot.
you.
Thank you, Shruti, for teaching me. Because you know what? You're right. This podcast is a legacy. We're going to touch base on yours, but a podcast is a legacy. Anything that you do that you deem is worthy is a legacy, And I think we also need to teach a lot of, doesn't matter if they are female or male, whatever they identify as, we need to teach people that whatever you do in life, that's your legacy. And I believe, and I don't think it will give them so much stress or pressure to, like, keep working hard or do something that is beyond their wildest dreams. If they feel like writing a book is enough, it should be enough. If they feel like that, going on, having a podcast or doing some service within the community or being an activist within their community is enough, as a legacy that they want to leave, I believe that is enough. And how you put it, chef's kiss, I loved it. But let's get into your podcast. What is your podcast about? And I did read that you were an author as well, so
Yeah.
talk about those two things.
Of course, of course. So my podcast is called The Sun-Kissed Souls. And the journey behind the podcast is, so I used to be an avid blogger while I was in my 20s. I used to love travel and understand, like I said, because growing up in India, I was able to witness multitude of cultures that just enhanced my perspective on life, Magda. So I used to travel a lot, and then thankfully I got into a job which took me to like different countries and different parts of the world. So I was very, very fortunate to gather pieces of wisdom and nuggets that have defined my thought process so that I'm able to articulate them today in front of you so well. So the podcast came about into being because I was always told that I used to write my blog really, really well on travel. And then I used to dabble in poetry as well. So I used to write poetry about life, about relationships, about discomforts in life, when you have a disillusionment, heartbreak, everything. And then so I did a couple of radio shows while I was in Mumbai around travel on Radio 1. So a lot of my friends told me that, why don't you combine each three of your creative pursuits and create a podcast of your own where you will be able to curate the content that you want. You will be able to sell that content in your own authentic way and your own authentic story. And it'll also give you enough opportunities to collaborate with people because I love people. I am a gregarious person by nature. I love conversations. I love understanding different perspectives. And I think that's the biggest gift as human beings that we have is the ability to retain information and process information to create a better life for ourselves and those others around us. So that is what led to the podcast. Now the podcast has four basic pillars, Magda. One is life's wisdom and life's mission. So if you are really working towards something that ignites your soul, you are more than welcome to come to the podcast and talk about it. The second is this identity. So when I talk about identity in my podcast, and there is an episode called One Life, Many Identities, I just don't want us to constrict ourselves with the whole woke culture right now. I just don't want the identities to be boxed into sexual orientation or the way I feel about within my body. I want identities to be something like talk about yourself. How does being a Caribbean person living in the US has given you those opportunities to figure out those subconscious biases that people carry for people who look like you? So I want identities to be all encompassing a human being. I want your identity to be as a partner, as a daughter, as a podcaster, as a black person, as a white person, as a brown person who's like myself, as somebody who follows Hinduism, somebody might follow Christianity or Zoroastrianism or Islam. How all of these different colors come together and create this beautiful portrait of us as human beings is what the podcast is all about.
That's interesting. I like that. Yeah, I like that concept. I like the multi, because everyone has so many identities. If you're not evolving, you're not changing, you're not growing. I don't know what you're doing. Oh no, I read this online. If you're not growing, you're dying. If you're not changing, you're dying. Not in a sense of like death, but you're just limiting yourself to learning more different aspects and who you are as a person if you're not learning and evolving and changing and growing. And I think we are all full of different identities, you know, from childhood to adolescence to teenage to adulthood and even into our elder years. We're always changing, we're always evolving and growing and learning new things about ourselves, learning new identities about ourselves. And sometimes we end up living that identity out while we're, you know, going through life. That's a really I'm gonna have to tap into your podcast. Might have to listen to a couple episodes so I could be like, oh, this is good. Because I'm always interested in learning about what people are doing. See, my podcast,
Oh,
I'd love to learn about people's journey through life. You know, I love to hear about this sounds very weird, but I love to hear about their struggles and their trials and tribulations and how they overcame them. The strength of people, learning about their strength and learning about what they've done um to to become better is just amazing to me because I know we all have stories, and I really really loathe this saying, we all have a story, nobody cares. No, I care. I care because there might be somebody out there that's probably dealing with the same issue that you have dealt with and have no idea how to get out of it. But when they hear your story or hear you talk about it, you give out strategies, you give out different ways that you dealt with it. You're honest about how you felt when you went through that particular situation. And you're like, yeah, I hated it. I didn't like it, but I had to go through it in order to get to the other side. So that's why I'm doing my podcast, because I'm like, I know there's people out here that are struggling and need some help. So let me just start it. But I love that. I really like your podcast. Now tell us about your book.
so the book was basically the first one that I wrote was
Oh,
a college campus romance novel because I was in my early 20s. I just had a massive heartbreak. I just wanted my emotions to come out of me. So that was that. The second book that I'm writing is around the whole concept of soulmates and the concept of home because Magda, I'm a first generation immigrant into Canada. And
mm-hmm.
because you said that you love about struggles, here is a piece of nugget for you. So when I came into Canada in December of 2020, in the middle of the pandemic,
Yeah.
having progressive work experience across four different countries in
Mm-hmm.
leadership roles in banking, you know, the first thing that everybody asked me was to anglicize my name so that I can get some interviews.
They
And
did
that
that?
was
They asked you that for
Yes,
real?
yes, yes.
That's
I talk about
disrespectful.
it in my podcast. I talk about it in my office. I talk about it at my workplace now because thankfully I have an employer who really, really respects multiculturalism and diversity. But yeah, the first thing that they said is, Shruti, the reason you might not be getting a lot of interviews is because, you know, your name is different and people tend to have these subconscious biases. Why don't you anglicize your name? And I was like, to your point, to your earlier point, I never knew how important my identity with my name is until they said that. Because I was like, you know what? I literally had to explain this to my husband about why I don't want to take his family name and add it to mine.
Mm.
And that is a practice across the globe. When you get married, you either take your husband's surname or you at least add it to yours. And my discussion with my husband went along the lines is, I have been Shruti Awasthi for the first 30 years of my life, like you have
Yeah.
been yourself. Just because I'm married to you, does it mean that I have to alter that name, that identity? The first thing that a child realizes, Magda, is the sound of the name. And that's how you learn to respond to your parents, your friends while you're growing up. And I have to tell you that he was very, very supportive of it. He understood my point and he said, I asked him, I said, why are men never taking the women's, surname? So marriage is both ways. So shouldn't people also know that you are married and you are married to somebody from the north because he's from the south? And he
Mhm.
said, no, I get your point. If you don't want to take my surname, you don't have to. For me, the relationship is enough. You don't need to brand yourself with myself. Like
Mhm.
there are two different things. There's a concept of branding and identity, and there is a concept of identity in itself. So I refused with that particular recruiter. I said, if you're asking me to change my identity today, you might as well ask me to change everything tomorrow. And then what I will be left would be a shell of a person that I would not recognize when I look into the mirror. So I will
Mm,
not do that. And Magda, it took me 6 months to find a respectable job in my field, but happy to report that I've never ever tried to change anything. I try to bring my authentic self to the table every single time I'm having a conversation because, like you mentioned earlier, we don't know who's listening.
yeah.
There are struggles. There were
Yeah.
days when I was thinking about why am I spending my hard-earned money, my savings to find something, but
Yeah.
it all paid off in the long run. Because now I look at newcomer women coming to Canada, and I'm like, you don't have to change a thing about yourself. Just wait for the right opportunity and the right employer, because the right people will actually value you. And somebody who doesn't like your name, you don't want to work with them anyway.
You don't. You don't want to work with them anyway. That's interesting that you didn't take your husband's last name. Do you
Now,
know that I have seen so many debacles about women taking their husband's last name? A lot of women saying that, to your point, I've been so and so this long. Why do I need to take this man's last name? And also to your other point, the branding portion of it, the personal branding portion of it. I've heard a lot of women say that too. And then there's some men that are like, absolutely not. If she's marrying me, she got to take my name because this is who I am. We are a unit. We are a team. We can't have two different names on paper. Blah blah blah. And that also, you also put another, dropped a little bomb in my head too. It's like, do I really want to take another man's name when I get married? We'll talk about that later. When I do meet somebody. But the book about soulmates, I'm
yes.
intrigued. I'm interested. Can you tap a little bit more into that? How and where did you come up with that concept and that idea? Is it based off of your marriage?
Not really, actually. I started writing the book even before I met my husband.
Okay.
But the concept of soulmates came from the idea that in all the cultures across the globe, it is so important to see whether a woman is single, married, or widowed. Like, have you ever
Mm.
done those filling on online, Magda?
Yes.
And you see that there is a drop down for title. For
Yes.
women, it is Miss, Mrs., MS, but for men, it's just Mr. because apparently a man's relationship to a woman doesn't define their social status. But for us,
Nope.
our whole identity is based on the fact that whether or not do we have a man as a partner in our life.
Mm-hmm.
And so while I was growing up, like I said, there was enough pressure to get married. In fact, when my father helped me do my MBA and when I was first getting this offer through my employer, my previous employer, to move to Thailand for a work assignment, I was 23. I had my MBA. I was a manager with a global financial firm, and they were shipping me all the way to Thailand to lead a project, which was a very new technology at the time. And all of my relatives came to my dad to say, you should not be letting a 23-year-old unmarried girl leaving the country. You have to get her married so that there is a man to take care of her. And in my mind, I was going, a guy, and with all respect to men, a boy who is himself 24 or 25, what qualifies him to decide about my life? Does he have more experience than me? Has he lived abroad like I have? Like, what
Mm-hmm.
qualifies a man to tell a woman that you should be doing this or this? And what makes our society so comfortable with the idea that you are better off with a man because you want to pursue your career? Let's get you settled
Oh.
first. Like, so this whole concept around women getting settled, like, have you ever questioned, Magda, why is it only women taking the man's surname? In all the cultures around the globe. I'm not even talking about Caribbean or Indian culture. Why? Because it all, if you trace back history, it all started with hunters and gatherers. Because men were physically stronger than women and they could
Yeah.
hunt, they were
Yeah.
always given the responsibility of managing the outside world, and women were
Yes.
more sheltered because we were the ones reproducing. And
Yes.
the reason our reproductive cycle was so important back then is because humanity was very small. We were trying to
Yeah.
expand. Now, we have people on the planet. We are no longer an endangered species. So whether I want to reproduce or not shouldn't be a question.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't come from the family or the royal family of, UK that I need to produce an heir to take care of the millions of dollars worth of properties. No, I don't even own a home. So anyway, coming back to the concept of soulmates. So I was literally being challenged because at that time, my father also, because of that pressure, he said, "Do you really want to get married? Should I look for alliances for you?" And that's when the whole concept of soulmates came to me. I said, so you are telling me that marriage is important, and I understand partnership is important, not
Yeah.
necessarily marriage. We can talk about that as well. And when it comes to partnership, it is very important to find a partner who at least shares 60% of your life's vision,
Okay.
and who
Yeah.
shares the same priority items. See, if I have 10 priority items, at least the top three should match. Otherwise,
Yeah.
that partnership is not going to last very long.
Mm.
So that led me to challenge the whole concept of soulmates. Like, is your partner your soulmate? Or can a soulmate be also your friend? For me, I personally feel my soulmate was my mother, because a soulmate is somebody who challenges you, who helps
Yeah.
you grow, and who makes you uncomfortable by questioning your own judgments and your own decisions. In most
Yeah.
marriages, I see them as marriages of convenience. I don't see a marriage where two people are really committed to grow each other. Because, like you said, women are basically, the creepers. They are supposed to be providing the support so that the man can outgrow, man can go out in the world and become a CEO. Their kids can be world class players or very well behaved. And what should the woman do? Sit at home and make sure that the house is clean, there is hot food on the table, and everybody's taken care of. That's not an equitable relationship, is it? So that led me to
No.
question the whole concept of soulmates and why do we even get married at the first place? And the another concept that I found very linked to the idea of soulmates is this idea about home. Have you ever
Mm.
felt like we say, I've never been to home in such a long time? Home is a
Yeah.
concept. Home is not a
Hmm.
place, Magda. Home is a concept. Because tell me something, I'm assuming that you still have family back in the Caribbean. When you go back now, do you feel exactly how you felt when you were a child?
No, you know what? I haven't been back since I was 14, and that's been over 22 years ago.
Yep.
So that was the last time I've been back. And I wasn't born in Haiti, I was born in the US. So my
Okay.
mother would take me back all the time growing up from like, I believe 6 months, 3 to 6 months up until I was 14. And I haven't been back since. I have not, because most of my family, my grandparents are all they're all deceased. They've all transitioned on both sides, paternal and maternal. When I was very, very young. The last grandparent I had transitioned way before COVID. I think it was like
Mm-hmm.
a few years, 2 to 3 years before COVID, they transitioned. So that was my father's father. That was the last grandparent that I had alive. Other than that, most of the family that I had in Haiti, they were unfortunately affected by the earthquake in 2010.
I'm so
One of
sorry.
my thank you. One of my family members, the house collapsed on them during the earthquake because they he thought that the family was still inside the house, but they ended up outside. So he went in to check, and the house just collapsed on them. But there's only like very less than a handful of family members left in Haiti. Everybody has left, and they're dispersed across the world. But the last time, yeah, seeing things that are going on in Haiti, it's not the same. I know when I will, if I ever do go back, I know it's not going to be the same, and I know I won't. I don't want to say I won't be safe in the capital in the city, but it will definitely have a different vibe. It will definitely have a different energy going on. I would have to go to like the tourist area, you know what I mean,
Mm-hmm.
offshore, at resorts, or probably get on a cruise and just pass
Mm-hmm.
through at Haiti as like one of the destinations and just keep going. But I understand what you're saying. I see the connection that you're making. That's very interesting. I never really, you know what? I've always heard of like the soulmates being could be a friend, it could be your actual partner, but I never heard of like a soulmate being a parent, which you just tapped into and just mentioned. But I've always heard the friends, your friends could be your soulmates. I never really put it into I never put it into perspective as like For me, soulmates is somebody that you're romantically involved with. That was my thoughts. And then as I got older, I realized no, it doesn't have to be somebody I'm romantically involved with. It could honestly be, a friend, or to your point, a parent. I love, you know what? You're making me think today. Like you have put so much into my mind, so many different viewpoints and so many different perspectives that I'd never looked at things the way that you just mentioned, because I'm so accustomed to the tradition of being married and the woman coming in and making and creating the environment of a home, and the man going out and working and providing and things like that, and the woman is making sure, is nurturing and making sure the home is a safe place, that everyone is fine and everyone is loved on. And again, like I said, the woman is sacrificing herself to make sure the entire family is at peace and making herself feel whole and things like that. You just like, this conversation is making me think about so many different things when it comes to relationships, because I'm not gonna lie, the other day I was like, you know what, if a relationship doesn't happen, it doesn't happen.
Oh, of course, of course. I would rather be single than be in a bad relationship. I think I value myself too much, and I think I've created enough value for people. And you know what, Magda? If my conversation has sparked a little bit of fire inside you, it's my mission accomplished. I don't need to record another episode because, I've done my bit. And this is what I was talking about, leaving a legacy. So
Yeah,
you will always remember the conversation. And if you are able to define your perspective on either one of the topics, I have
yeah.
left a legacy on Magda Desir. I don't know how long that legacy will
You know
far
what?
into.
I don't mean to cut you off, but you pronounce my last name really good. I appreciate you for that, because do you know how hard it is for people to get this year? I was like, it's not that hard, ladies and gentlemen. It's really not. 5 letters, 2 vowels, 3 consonants. Like, it's not that hard. It's French. Like, come on. But thank you for pronouncing my last name. But anyway, I didn't mean to cut you
Of
off. Keep going.
course.
I'm
No,
listening.
so that's what I'm saying. Like, the idea is to really think about what you want in life. And I think most times women were never given the opportunity to think enough about themselves. Do you also understand that why this idea of romance is so linked to women, and men literally make fun of us saying, "Oh, women always seek romance," because subconsciously the society has imbibed romance into the lives of women by making sure that it is romantic to let go of what you want to let your partner have what they want. And to
Hmm.
me, I usually question that saying, I am alive, the man is alive, or howsoever people identify these days. Everybody has a life. And we have a very finite time on the face of earth. So what qualifies my life to be of lesser importance than those of them around me? So that I should not follow what I want to do. I should not follow my purpose. I should not question anything. But others get to live their lives the way they want. What makes my life of a lesser value? Is it the ability to procreate? Is it the ability to naturally not feel competitive with men in my life? Like, what is it? All of these are good qualities. If anything, I should be given awards for creating a new life, or to be able to help my brother get a better position, or to help my husband go out in the world and fight for what is truly his. So are these things that we should be valuing? Because I see them being disvalued mostly in the society. And that's what Magda was saying. So there's a very, very beautiful writer you have to read if you're looking for any sort of concept of female empowerment. His name is Charles Bukowski. And there is a very famous quote by Charles Bukowski that I read while I was in college. And again, like many of the quotes that I keep written next to where I work so that I'm grounded to my energy, is women who seek to be equal to men lack ambition. We are already better than men because men cannot create life. Men cannot sacrifice their own goodness for making a woman achieve what they want in their lives. So we are already far ahead of them. You want equality? That's nothing. You already have much more than them. All you need to realize is the power that lies within you, Magda. And that's why I hate the term women empowerment. Women don't need empowerment. We are pretty empowered. Like God empowered us to create another bit of life. How much more empowerment do you want? What we want is equality of opportunities. What we want is equitable access to platforms where we are able to choose a life of our own and make decisions and make wrong decisions, but be dealt with grace and kindness and compassion, just like any other man would be. And that's all we want. We don't want to fight the whole feminist, man hating world. No, we love men. We biologically are designed to love them. What we don't love is the fact that how come their life is much more important than my life.
And that is a word on the second day of Women's History Month. This was needed for Women's History Month. Wow.
Thank
Shruti,
you.
you came through with a word. You came through with so many different perspectives, so many different insights, especially for me as a woman of color, especially a Black woman and a woman of Caribbean descent, you know, and being so accustomed to what societal standards has created for women to adhere by and to, keep us in line when it comes to being a woman. Because we also have dealt with the laws that were passed saying that we can't even, you know what I mean, about our own reproductive system, which is insane to me. But, America's America, but it is what it is. So I am in awe. I am thankful. No, I really am in awe because I did not have those type of perspectives lined up in my head. Because in my mind, I'm just like, okay, well, eventually God's gonna like make me meet this man. We're gonna get married. I'm gonna change my name, go through all this process. But, then I see, like, as I mentioned before, you'll see like discussions about women changing their last name and not changing it. And then you see a whole discussion on the man is supposed to go out and do this, the woman's supposed to stay home. And I battle with, do I want to be a stay-at-home mom? Do I want to work? Do I want to depend on one income? Like, even if I do I want to be given an allowance? Like, I'm a grown woman. Why do I want to be given an allowance? You know what I mean? Like, it's a lot that you think about and see, and it's a lot being pushed in front of our faces that your perspective is refreshing. It's really refreshing, and it's inspiring and gives me so much insight. Like, I have a lot of ideas right now. There's so many questions I want to ask you, but I don't want to hold you. But I think I'm going to journal this and sit with it and pray on it and learn about different cultures on how people, how do I want to say this? How people like move in relationships and move in marriages, because I know there's more than one way. There's more than
Of
one way to
course.
do it, and
Of
it doesn't
course.
necessarily have to be the American way or what society deems us to the rules that we have to follow based on what society says. So this is like sparking so much in me. Like, if I can show you guys the feeling that is happening inside of my body right now. I'm like, this is what I'm doing inside of my body, but I have to keep calm because I'm just like, oh my gosh, she just dropped a word on the second day of Women's History Month. Like, this is beautiful. Thank you so much, Shruti. Like, I love this. I love this conversation. I
Thank
really
you,
did.
Magda.
I
Thank
really
you.
did. Like, you brought a whole different perspective on relationships to me, and for me and anybody else who's watching and listening, because there are young girls that probably are, that look you like you and myself, are listening to people saying you got to go to school. Once you're done with school, make sure you go to college, and when you get out of college, you got to find a man, then you got to settle down, then you got to build a family, and you know what I mean, like that whole conversation. I'm sure they're hearing this, and they're like, no, there's more ways than one, and creating a life for yourself. So this is a great conversation. i
Oh,
i loved
Magda.
it.
I enjoyed it so much as well, Magda. And like I said, I have a podcast. I will invite you over. We will go deeper into all of these things. And I would love to know your perspectives then of how the shift has happened. So I might just invite you in a couple of months to my podcast and let's talk about what we talked about today versus where you are then. And Magda, there's one more thing that I want to leave, especially the women listeners with, given that it's International Women's Month. is it's all right to be wanting to settle down and have kids and
Yeah.
take your husband's name because,
Yeah.
like I said, women can choose whatever they want as long as it is not imposed on them, and it's a choice that you are making for yourselves. And for women who are ambitious, I also have to tell you that ambition and love and beauty in life can coexist. How?
Oh,
It's when you ask yourself the question that I'm doing 10 things for my family this month. What are the top two things that I'm doing just for myself? So,
yes.
till the time you can keep your own inner cup happy and full,
Yes.
you are
Yeah.
able to be much more productive in life.
Yes, I love that. And that goes for all women, no matter if you have children or not. No matter if you are a caretaker or taking care of elderly parents, or not elderly, but if you have siblings who might have some type of disease or anything across the board, whoever you're taking care of or not taking care of, this goes for all women. And I appreciate that. And thank you so much, Shruti, for taking the time to come to the podcast and talking to me, talking to my listeners and viewers. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to end it right here because we could go on forever. Like, we honestly could go on forever. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like, comment, share. Do not forget to follow us on Instagram at Unloaded and Uncovered Podcast. And also find and follow us on Facebook, Unloaded and Uncovered. Shruti, thank you so much for coming. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Also, wait, before we go, where can people find you?
Oh, of course. So you can find me on my podcast called The Sun-Kissed Souls. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. You can also find me as Shruti Awasthi. You will find me into product management in Canada. So lots of ways to find me. And if you just want to send me an email, my email ID is with Magda. Reach out to her. We can always happy to connect, Magda. And I'm more than willing, like if women want to have a conversation, I can bring in a lot of guests onto the podcast and let's just have a roundtable conversation about making different choices and still reaching out the same outcome, which is a dignified life for a woman, no matter the choice.
Yes. Amen. Ashe. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for viewing. Thank you for listening. Until next time. Did mine work? Mine didn't work.
It will work. I have to stop doing it. You have to make a nice heart.
Okay, I'm gonna try. But it didn't
Go a
work.
little
Oh,
bit
there
back. See?
it goes. It
Yeah,
worked.
it
All right,
does.
ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you next time. Have a great weekend. Bye.